Is this limbo?
No! This is a place between dreams, myths, and miracles.
So, we don't learn a lot about Garvey in schools. So I didn't learn a lot about Garvey. My information about Garvey came from the research that I started doing in order to do the production. I was doing another production called Riot Act. And in Riot Act, I started to look at Paul Bogle and Tacky and George William Gordon. And I wanted to include Marcus Garvey in that production. When I tried to include Marcus Garvey in that production, I was blown away by how much he had done and how effective he was in changing thoughts about our identity, black identity, his concepts about economic self-sufficiency, his concepts about black unity, the Back to Africa movement, that type of stuff. And I couldn't include him in the production that I was working on before because it would have been too much. I said, but no, this man deserves a production on his own.
Today I stand for justice, but who wins tomorrow?
And so I did that, and that's how I came to create Garvey the Musical. I interviewed various academics and various persons who were Garveyites, so to speak. Well, I would hope that my production served to enhance the picture of Garvey as a black nationalist, a Pan-Africanist, somebody who has helped to change the trajectory of black people from seeing themselves as, the bottom of the bucket, so to speak. I did my best to present him in an honest way, so as to not let it seem like it's propaganda. As a Jamaican, it was difficult because people would tend to think that you want to sell Garvey. I didn't want to just sell Garvey. I wanted to interrogate his ideas. I wanted to interrogate his understandings of himself as a black man. And why did he do the things that he did? And so I focused on that, and I hope that people saw that. I wanted people to get a sense of the issues that he was really dealing with. I wanted people to get a sense of the time that he was in and the way he could deal with those issues in such a time that he lived his life and impacted the world. It's phenomenal how much he did in that short space of time, from so far back.
There's hope for our people, but only if we're hopeful and we don't feel no shame.
If we unite and join forces, we'll own our own resources.
We'll have a wealth and keep our pride.
Bye-bye, Uncle Tom. Hello, freedom song. Bye-bye, selling our souls for change. Bye-bye, Black Star Line. By next year, this time you'll buy yourself some peace of mind.
This clipping will be the basis on which we might be able to make proceedings against him for fraud and his Black Star Line propaganda.
I think the thing that affected Garvey most of all was maybe his ego, maybe his arrogance. But then you needed that kind of ego, arrogance to do all of what he did. And in his defense, I'm sure he would just call it confidence. And you need a certain level of confidence in order to be able to, first of all, to believe that you can accomplish some of the things that he accomplished,
16 to 20,000 West Indians, 250,000 black Americans fought in that world war. For whose world is it? They hate you everywhere. What are you fighting for?
It was important to me to get this out there, and it was important to use a form that could, as you say, influence popular culture. I did really want to do that, and so that's why I used the musical, because nothing infiltrates the mind as easily and as readily as music. And there's a class that I do with Peace Corps volunteers and other people who are not from here, let us say. And when I'm talking about Jamaican culture, and it's so interesting, I always use Bob Marley's war until the philosophy that holds one way superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned everywhere is war. But something about that song is that the song is playing and it just has this groove, it just has this vibe, it just has this feel, and it's just going. And anybody, white, black, Indian, Chinese, can rock and move and sway and feel the joy of that music, and yet it is saying something so powerful, so potent, so anti-imperial, so anti-colonial, so anti-hegemonic, you know what I mean? And yet it's just in this music that is just kind of rhythmically just going into your soul.
Which zoo, them want Rasta man walk through. No cage can hold Rastafari.
Also, the education that people get is not through going into the classrooms, and that's not where people get their education. The reason why enough youth are bleach is because them hear them for bleach. From the DJ that said they must bleach. You know, they're in the streets and the music is saying do certain things, and they do the certain things that the music is telling them to do. In Jamaica, Garvey, the pride of Garvey is that Garvey is our first national hero, and he did all of these wonderful things in the States. I think that's about it. I don't get a sense that people understand the enormity of what he did, and I don't think people understand how valuable what he did, how valuable it was in terms of transforming black identity the world over. The minds of so many leaders, political leaders who came to the fore in the 50s and 60s and 70s even, who credit Garvey, who credit Garvey's philosophies, who credit Garvey's ideas and opinions for their own awakening, for their own sense of themselves as black men and women, for their own sense of their black identity. And so many of these leaders have credited Garvey.
Mr. Garvey, for a foreigner, why are you making all these waves?
Against my will and by stubborn protest, I was seized from my silent repose in Africa and taken here to be a slave 300 years ago.
Garvey's impact was powerful in terms of shifting the consciousness of black people upward, and that was his motive, that was his intention. As I said, black unity, black pride, economic self-sufficiency, all of those things were very impactful for the world. One of the statements that we have in the production is that one of the characters said, Garvey, to every youth downtown with a pushcart have 3 pictures on it. Marcus Garvey, Haile Selassie, and Bob Marley. But them still downtown a pushcart. The pictures by themselves don't do anything. The pictures by themselves don't do enough, right? Yes, identity, brand identity, face recognition, yeah, we recognize this person, but what does that stand for? What does he stand for? And how is that impacting my life?
In the castle of my skin, there's a power within. Our world now begins.
Here I am, feeling whole.
The Garvey production started with Garvey in limbo. It started with Garvey having died, and he's in a space where he's questioning himself, thinking about his impact, and we are inside his mind in this space. African ancestors visit him, and then they take him to look at the world that came to be in spite of him, or maybe because of him. And so the back and forth of the production is about that, him questioning himself and him being on trial by himself.